Alright, what's up nerds? This is Cam. Hopefully we're going to finish up that custom inspector we've been working on. There's not too much left to do. This should be a relatively short video. We just have to add functionality for the add and remove buttons at the bottom so that we can like add a Mixin and remove a Mixin easily from this list without having to have this default inspector drawing the list up here. So we can just jump right into it in our call action Mixin's inspector. The first thing we're going to do is add another one of these callbacks, but for when the add and remove button has been pressed. So if we just head down to the bottom, we can pop into our Mixin list here and add a on add drop down callback. And that's going to take a rect, and that's going to be the position of the button. So we can just do rect here, and I think it takes a reorderable list, and then we can lambda expression and close that off. So then the first thing we're going to do is actually create a generic list here, and this is going to be our sorry, not a generic list, a generic menu. This is going to be the menu that we show. We'll just call it drop down menu, and it's going to be a new menu. And then next, basically, we have to find all of the Mixins that we want to display in our menu. So we can do that with the asset database, and we can basically just store an array of strings here for every Mixin that we find. And what it's going to be returning is GUIDs, which is the globally unique identifier. So we'll just call this Mixin GUID. GUIDs, I guess, and then we'll get it from the asset database. So we can say asset database dot find assets, and this is what's returning those GUIDs, but we have to give it some search parameters here. So it takes two strings, or sorry, a string and then an array of strings, and it can be a filter or folders that we want to look in. But I think an easier way to do that is with just a filter. So what we can do, what we can filter out is names of scripts or script labels. And script labels are nice, or it's not script labels, it's asset labels, but we're going to give it all to scripts. So if you select all your Mixin scripts here, and make sure these folders are deselected, you can give them a label by clicking on this little blue label icon in the bottom right corner of the screen. So if we click on that, we can give them a new label here, and we'll just type Mixin and hit add, and now all our Mixins have the asset label just Mixin. So that's easy to do, and then we can just filter out our assets by label here. So in find assets, we can just send in our filter, and to specify that it's a label, you need an L and then a semicolon and then Mixin. So that's looking for assets with the Mixin label there, and then we can just iterate through our UIDs, find the path to them, and then display that path in our drop down menu. So we'll iterate through them with a for loop. And then we'll find them using asset database function here. So we can say, sorry, string path is going to equal asset database, not find, GUID to asset path. So this will return an asset path when given a UID here. And then the UID we're going to give it is Mixin GUIDs at I. And then, so now we have the paths, we can display that in the menu. So what we can do is drop down menu, add an item to it, and then the item is going to take GUI content, so we can do new GUI content, and that's going to be our path here. And the way that this works in the menu is every time there's a backslash, it's going to give you a sub menu. So our path here is going to have path direction, just like you would normally see in a path to an asset, but the menu is going to split it up into different sub menus, which will be nice because then menu items Mixins that are in the same folder are going to be grouped by sub menus already. And then we need the bool on, which it's false, I believe, and then a function basically that we want to call when someone clicks on one of these. So we can just put a function add item here, and then you just have to pop down here and declare a function add item. So now add item, this function is going to get called when you click on one of these assets here. But let's just pop out of this and make sure that this is actually working properly. And it is not. Oh yeah, okay. Just so you have to tell the menu to draw basically where the mouse is. So I think it's show as context. Yeah. So show as context. You just have to call that at the end of your callback there. And now, yeah. So now assets, game, scripts, mixins, and then here are all your mixin folders. And then you can click on any of these, and it does nothing because it's just calling that empty add item class. And that's fine. So if we look at drop-down menu add item here, the fourth parameter you can give is an object, and that object is going to get passed to our add item class. So if we add object here for now, that'll be fine. So now add item can receive an object, and now we just have to declare an object, and all we want to send is that path to the asset, and we're going to load that asset at that path. So we'll just create a class here, and we'll call it like asset info. And asset info is going to have a string path, and this is a class, sorry, and we'll serialize it. And it's a class, so it doesn't need those. Okay, so yeah, so we've asset info with a path here. So then if we go back down here, we can send in a new asset info, and we will set the path to equal path. I'm just gonna call this asset path. Yeah, so there we go. Asset path equals path, so that'll work fine. And then here we are receiving our object. So then what we want to do is cast this to a Mixin base, or sorry, not a Mixin base, to a asset info, because we know it's going to be sending in an asset info. So we can say our asset info equals, and then cast it asset info object, and that'll give us access to that path there. So now we can look up and load the item at that path, essentially. So the way we're going to do that, or not even at that path, just the asset with that, the component with that name. So we'll pull the name out of the path, and that's relatively easy to do. We're just going to do string asset name is going to equal path. So path is it needs an include here. So if you just hover over it and click Control+, that'll pop up, and it needs using system.io, and it'll add it automatically, which is super nice. So then we're going to use this path to say get file name without extension. So then we give it a path, which is, sorry, asset info dot asset path. So we send this path in, and it'll return the file name. So if we're adding like Fire Raycast Mixin, the string here will be Fire Raycast. So then we can use that string, that name, to get the type, which is Fire Raycast. And we're going to do that by saying type. Type needs an include as well. Using system. Yeah, okay. So type asset type is equal to type dot get type, and get type takes a string and then returns the type that corresponds with that string. So we'll do asset name, which is how it would work normally, but in Unity Editor internal, you need to add comma and then the like overarching type of what this is. So like its highest level, it is assembly C#. I'm just going to double check that. Item name plus assembly C#. Yeah. So it works a bit weirdly. Yeah, so that's right. So yeah, it works a bit weirdly in this Unity Editor internal, the get type function here, but this seems to work fine. So if you know why that is, leave me a comment. But now, so we can basically add a component of this type to our game object and then add that component into our list. So we want to mix in base because we know that's what it's going to be, and we want to edit some parameters as soon as we add it. So we'll call this new mixin, and it's going to equal sorry, not asset database. So yeah, so call mixin action dot game object dot add component, and we're going to add a component of type asset type. So we're basically saying where this list is. Oh yeah, and we have to cast it. So we're saying where this list is. So our call mixin action list that we already have a reference to that we got right at the beginning. We're getting the game object that it's on, and we're adding a component that is of this type that we just pulled from the name of the asset that our menu sent us. So whatever you've clicked on, we've now added, and we have a reference to it that is new mixin. So we can set up a couple things here. We can say new mixin dot show info equals true, and that'll be nice because then when you add a mixin, it'll show it right off the bat. It'll show the info for it, because I'm assuming you're going to want to edit its parameters right away. And then we can say new mixin dot name equals asset type, and then oh, sorry, not asset type, asset name. And then that name will default to whatever the name of the script is, which is nice because right now they're coming in blank, which is kind of ugly because that label comes from that name. So now when you add a mixin, the label will say the name of the mixin unless you want to customize it yourself in the info tab, which is some nice functionality there. And then now all we have to do is add this new mixin into our list, our reorderable list. So then we can just grab our mixin list, the serialized property, and we want to add, or sorry, get array element at index. And oh yeah, if we're gonna do that, so what we need to do is we need to increment the size of this first. So we can say mixin list dot serialized property array size plus plus. So that'll add one new element to our array, and we can actually store the index of this new element with just an int here, and then we can say add array element at index, and we'll say index here, and then that is going to have an empty object reference, and we'll set that to be new mixin. Okay, sorry, it's a little bit. It's a little weird, but it works. It basically is finding the serialized property of this list. It's finding where the last spot is in that list, which is the new spot that we just added in the line above, and then it's setting its object that is at that element to equal the new object that we just added, which is new mixin. So that should work perfectly. And then the last thing we can do is just say our serialized object, which is our whole class here, will apply all this. We'll apply this whole mess, and that should work fine. Let's test it out though. So now if I pop in, I can go through all my drop downs here and add a play particle system, and it didn't work. Okay, sorry. It actually did work. It just had to load. The changes into the inspector. Sometimes that takes a bit, but now if you pop in, I didn't change anything. But if you go in, you can add freely add, and it comes up and displays all the information you need. And then if you click Show Mixin, you see that it added that component to your game object here. So that's nice. You can add with ease. Basically, you don't even have to go into the project folder or anything. You can just grab this drop down. One thing I am going to change actually, in my add drop down callback, I want to shorten the amount of drop downs you have to get through to get to your mixins. So I can do that with a bit of string manipulation here. So I have my path here, up here actually. So I have my path, which I need to send in as asset path in my asset info object there. But I can make like a menu path here. So I can say string menu path, and that's going to equal path dot replace. And what I can do with replace is I can grab the start of that is, I believe, assets slash game slash scripts slash, so I can grab that and replace it with nothing, and that'll shorten my path there. Just take off the first 3 steps through the drop down, and then I can put my new GUI content to be menu path here, but I'm still sending in the full path as my asset info here. And then if I go down and let this actually load the changes, yeah, so now it goes right to Mixins. I could even take off Mixins if I want. So now it pops into the script folder by default, and then displays all the Mixins from there. So that's kind of nice. So now I'll add the remove button, which is easy to do. We can just do Mixin list on remove callback, and that sends in a reorderable list. And then, so the way this is supposed to work is you're supposed to be able to say reorderable list dot default behaviors dot do remove button, and then send in a reference to your list that they've already given us, and that should be all of the logic right there. You should be able to just write this and it'll work, but unfortunately it does not. It still doesn't work. So I don't know why exactly, but it's okay, because we can make a workaround for it. Like I keep saying, it's not fully supported, so you can't complain for the occasional bug. But we have a reference to the actual call Mixin action here, so that's our class. So we can just get the action Mixins, and then we can say remove at ourselves. So we can remove it at the Mixin list dot index, which is the index that's selected currently. So whichever one we have selected, we'll remove it from the list here. But that's not all we can do, because I'm just going to store this index. That's not all we can do though, because if Mixin is hidden, because we've unchecked show Mixin, and then we remove it from the list, we'll have no way to get it back. So what we want to do is actually unhide any Mixin that we're removing. So we can say call Mixin action the list here, action Mixins at I dot hide flags. So this component's hide flags is going to equal hide flags dot none, so it won't be hidden at all. And then we will say that it's bool show Mixin, because it is being shown now, is going to equal true. And that'll work. That should do all that. So if I click remove on these, yeah, it removes them, no problem, and then they display down here, so they're not lost. So that works perfectly, and that's it right there. Like that's everything we need. We can pop into like call action Mixins here, and then we can say hide an inspector on this list, and then that'll disappear. Oh, and then one more nice callback we can do right up at the top is we can say Mixin list dot on draw header, on header, just header, draw header callback, sorry. So draw header callback, it has a rect, which is the rect of the header of the list, and we can kind of override the title here. If you notice, it just says serialized property right now, so we can make a new label field and just put our own title here. Editor GUI. So the label field takes a rect, but we can just give it the rect that it's given us, and then just a new GUI content. I think it takes GUI content. Yeah, so a new GUI content, and then we can say our action Mixins. Okay, so if we come down to here, then yeah, so the title's overridden and our action Mixins list is hidden, so we just have this really nice, really modular piece of I don't know, designer heaven. They can go wild and create as many weapons as they want using this fancy little inspector here. So that's awesome. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. There's a few more things that I want to do with this. Like, I don't really like this. The check mixin list looks ugly beside my beautiful reorderable list here. So I'm sure I can figure out a better way to do that. But if you guys have anything you want me to do with this, shoot me a comment and I can totally work it in. I mean, it's so customizable that anything you want to do, you pretty much can. It's just figuring out how. But yeah, let me know what you're thinking. Let me know your comments. I'd love to hear any feedback. And thanks a lot. Thanks for watching.